Okay, so welcome to part two of this interesting webinar on the best practices in swine nutrition. If you haven't watched the first part, you can head over to this channel and check the last video. You'll get the first part of this webinar, so that you can continue to receive notifications whenever a new video is up. Make sure you like this channel and also turn on your notification bell so that whenever a tutorial video drops, you can actually access it. Okay, so we're going to continue our discussion by looking at the following. We'll quickly talk about what we did in the last part, a brief summary. We'll now go into the nutrient needs of pigs based on their physiological state, and I'll just be taking three states: the grower, the starter, and the finisher state. Of course, there are different states. We have the lactating state, we have the gestating state, and so on and so forth. So we'll quickly talk about that, and then we'll look at the strategy for improving feed intake and conversion. Okay, so that's exactly what we'll be talking about in today's webinar. Alright, so let's quickly dive in by looking at what we did in the previous episode. Okay, so best practices on swine nutrition. In the very first part of this video, we talked about swine nutrition, and one of the most important things I highlighted there was that there is no, should I say, universal feed guide, because what is obtainable to one farmer might not be applicable to another farmer. So every farm has certain peculiarities, sometimes based on the farm size, sometimes based on the location, and so forth. So every farm has certain peculiarities that normally will influence the kind of nutrition system and inclusion rates that they adopt in the farm. Alright, but despite these peculiarities, there are three core pillars of profitable swine nutrition. The very first thing that the farmer needs to know, especially when you are developing a homegrown feeding system for your farm, you want to compound your own feed using an array of materials. Okay, one thing you should know first is what are the nutrient requirements of pigs. It is very important that you recognize that the nutrient requirements of pigs. Secondly, what you should understand is, having known the nutrient requirements of pigs, you should now know the nutrient requirements of pigs based on their physiological states. It is important. After that, you should also have a knowledge of quality feed ingredients and their alternatives. You should be able to identify quality feed ingredients as well as their alternatives that you can actually use in combination with these materials. And then lastly, you should also know the best strategy to deploy feed ingredients for efficient feed intake and conversion. So essentially, if you are able to understand these three vital points, then you should be able to get the best solution in terms of efficient and cost-wise a pig nutrition system. So we look at the nutrition requirements for pigs, and we said, look, just like human beings have a balanced feed system, a balanced feed, nutrients that make up the balanced feeding. For pigs also, we also have nutrients that should make up a balanced feed. These nutrients include carbohydrates, otherwise called energy, protein, fatty acids, vitamins, and minerals, as well as water. So these are the basic nutrients required by pigs. So essentially, if you are not buying, if you're not buying your own feed or buying ready-made feed, you're making your own feed, you should be able to assemble materials that have the following nutrients, rather: carbohydrates, protein, fatty acids, vitamins, and minerals, as well as ensure steady, free access to clean water throughout the day for the pig. Okay, so In keeping with our agenda, we'll quickly dive into the nutrient needs of pigs based on their physiological state. And I said we'll quickly examine starter, grower, and finisher states. To be clear, what we call starter pigs are what a lot of people call weaners or nursery pigs. These are pigs that have just been weaned off the sow. And then for grower pigs, usually they should weigh between 25 to 55 kilo, and then your finisher pig should weigh starting from 60 kilo and above. So there's always the need for you to balance the weight of the animal in assessing which category the animal actually belongs to. Alright, so what is on the screen is a kind of sample feed guide. It's a template, really. Like I said at ab initio, there is no universal feed guide. What farmers need to do is to be able to have an idea of what the animal needs and the extent to which you can include some of these nutrients in the feed, and balancing all these nutrients together if you are formulating feed in your farm. Alright, so to be clear, we have energy 1, energy 2. Now the difference really is energy 1 is the main feed ingredient, while energy 2 here refers to waste products or byproducts of the main feed ingredient. Okay, just like you have cassava, you now have cassava peels, which is coming off the cassava. Protein 1 and protein 2. So what we mean here is the protein 1 is the plant-based protein, and the protein 2 is the animal-based protein. And then we have fiber, fat, and then we have fillers. I will explain quickly. Let me explain what filler is. So a filler ingredient is an inexpensive, low-quality feed product with very little nutritional value, usually intended to achieve bulk and feed. So that's what a filler is. And you will see here that we don't usually use fillers for starter pigs, okay, but we can actually use a little bit of filler for grower pigs and a little bit of filler in finisher pigs. Okay, one thing you should know is that filler contains a lot of fiber. Okay, that means it's actually very cheap. That makes it very cheap. But starter pigs do not really digest fiber well, but finisher pigs, okay, they have the ability to process fiber to a certain level. That is why we can actually adjust the inclusion rate of fillers in finisher pigs. Okay, so if we go to starter pigs, they're actually going to need very high level of energy, particularly the main source of energy. So if you are using maize or wheat, you actually want to include it up to 60%. Okay, and then if you are using protein for your protein source, the ideal situation is for you to bring the plant protein and the animal protein together. So you can include your plant protein, typically your soybean, up to 17%, and then you can include your fish meal or your blood meal up to 5% of your composed feed. And then you want to bring in a little bit of fiber and a little bit of fat into their feed. This table does not include vitamin and minerals. We'll be able to do that on another section. All right, so then we go to grower pigs. So with grower pigs, you have more room to introduce some of the waste products. I actually want us to be careful here, because when we talk about waste products, we have to look for quality alternatives, and processing and storage of waste products is very important, and we'll be talking about that more when we go to the section that deals with feed intake. So you can include your main feed ingredients up to 25%, and then you can diversify and bring in some of these quality waste alternatives up to 45% of whatever you are formulating. Your protein source, you can do away with combining plant and animal based protein. You can take either of them, or you can just go with plant based protein up to 15%. You need to include fiber, you need to include fat, and you can find any suitable filler that will add bulk to the feed. In finisher, of course, because one thing about having different feed guide for different category of animals is it enables you not just to adjust the nutrient requirement but also to adjust the cost implication of feeding these pigs. So if you look at what you are going to be spending for starter and grower, compare it with finisher, you see that your feeding cost definitely will drop. So with finisher, you can have a main energy source up to 15%, and then you can now introduce and jack up the number of alternatives that you are introducing into the feed. You can jack up that number up to 40% or even 45%, right? So of course you're going to reduce the number of protein. You can reduce the number of protein up to 12%. A lot of farmers do 10%, but I think 12% is better. You can do it up to 12%. You can find a cheap source of protein in the Nigerian market. So we have soybean, we have soy meal, we have full fat soya. These are expensive. You can also get other sources of protein like sesame cake is also an option, and it's relatively cheaper compared to the other. So with finishers, since they are going to market and you have maybe 3 weeks to 4 weeks to send them to market, you want to bring your feeding cost down by looking for a variety of alternatives. You want to also increase your fiber and also increase fillers to ensure that whatever you are giving to them has a little bit of bulk in it. So that is one of the things. So if you look at this this template here, okay, you'll be able to fit in some of the nutrients we spoke about. You can now remove the energy and bring in your energy source. You can bring in your protein source. You can bring in your fiber source, and you can be able to calculate the cost implication for this. All right. So let's quickly look at improving feed intake in pigs. Because in the last video I said, look, when it comes to feeding pigs, you have to look at the nutrient quality, but you also have to look at a number of other factors that will ultimately affect the efficacy of whatever you are giving to the animals. So with feed intake, level of feed intake is the ultimate driver of growth in the pig industry. Pigs who consume more feed without any gastrointestinal complications are more likely to grow. This is true. And with feed intake, we discover that the emphasis for farms is to utilize high quality feed ingredients to improve feed palatability and subsequently feed intake. So I've always emphasized that even if you need to diversify and bring in other alternative feed ingredients, you need to keep an eye for high quality. Okay, you need to keep an eye for processing and how you can store these materials that would minimize mycotoxin and also ensure that it's something that the animals can actually consume. So the emphasis for farms is to utilize high quality feed ingredients and to improve feed palatability and subsequently feed intake. So there are primarily 3 factors that affect feed intake. We have the social or environmental factors, we have the peak factors, I'll talk about that, and then we also have the dietary factors. So let's quickly look at the social or environmental factors. So there are 3 things you actually want to keep an eye for: regulating pen temperature. For starter pigs, you want to keep them in a dry, warm place that has less drought. Okay, this will actually improve their feed intake. But if you keep them in a place that is actually very cold, their feed consumption level will definitely drop. Okay, you actually want to also avoid overstocking. So if you have a small room and you have about 30 or 40 finishers, then the competition for feed will be intense, and then you might have to start picking out animals that could not actually follow the flow of growth. Okay, and lastly, you want to continuously sort and regroup animals. Of course, animals born the same day, that you move them from the same pen, from the same stage, they might not end up in the market at the same time. You might have some animals that fall on the way, so that is why you need to continuously sort and regroup animals. This would ensure that whatever they are doing, the competition for feed is reduced and they can actually match their pen mates. Alright, so we go to the peak factors. So with peak factors, one thing is important: genetics equals feed intake. So we can do everything. And I remember at some point in one of the webinars or seminars that I actually anchored, someone was asking what is the place of genetics in all of this, and I said, look, genetics is like the infrastructure. Genetics is the infrastructure. Nutrition is the superstructure. So you have to build on an infrastructure of quality genetics. Okay, using inferior genetics, no matter the kind of feed, superior feed formulation you have, you might not get the result you want to get. Okay, so better genetics equals better results. Barn entry weights, bigger animals feed more than smaller animals, of course. So that is why in the last slide we spoke about the need to regroup animals from time to time. Okay, and then lastly, healthy pigs will feed more than sick pigs. That's the truth. So with your daily management, you want to be able to pick out animals that are sick, okay, and then isolate them for treatment. Because if you do not detect the sick animals well, you keep them with the healthy animals. These sick animals, if you do not record cases of mortality, will not grow properly. So healthy pigs will definitely feed more than sick pigs. And then okay, all right, so we look at the dietary factors. So just like I have said in the course of this webinar, I said use quality feed ingredients, ensure balance. So if you're using micronutrients, premix, dietary calcium, dicalcium, and phosphorus, all of these other micronutrients, ensure that you include them in its correct level. Okay, because sometimes excess micronutrients will inhibit the intake of other feed ingredients. Okay, so you want to ensure balance. And lastly, you want to process and store feed ingredients properly. Of course, if you do not process and store feed ingredients properly, your feed will start having things like mycotoxins, and mycotoxins will definitely affect the growth of the animal if it does not lead to the death of the animal. So these are some of the important factors you want to bear in mind even when you are formulating your local feed and formulating whatever you're formulating in your farm. You want to put these things in mind. You want to put the dietary factors in mind, you want to put the pig factors in mind, and you want to put the social environmental factors in mind. All right, so thank you for watching. You can always contact me via email. The email is displayed on the screen, victor.eyo@gmail.com. You can also WhatsApp me. If you're in Nigeria, you can directly WhatsApp me on 0813-216-603-6038. If you're outside Nigeria, you can just add a country code of +234. If you actually want a personalized coaching on swine nutrition, you can send me a message. You can always join our swine nutrition class on WhatsApp and Telegram anytime. Make sure you subscribe to this channel and turn on the notifications so that you'll be notified whenever we have a new training video out. Okay, so thank you, and I'll see you on the next video.